I would like to do just a brief introduction. Welcome to CAAVCON 2020. Unexpectedly, I'm sure for all of us, it is online this year. That has enabled some interesting things and of course is provoking some others and will entail some technical difficulties and some unexpected turns, I'm sure. But we have prepared a conference for you that includes both the Zoom format that you're in right now and then Mozilla Hubs, which we'll talk to you a little bit more about later. This is our 5th annual conference, and it's a pleasure to welcome you to Clemson University, even if we're remote. It's good to see familiar faces and new members. We have an excellent set of presentations from across the globe, really, which is sort of fantastic. I think the farthest away is Matthias Epple, who is in Germany, but we have others across the United States. The one discovery of all of the online format is the limitation of the time zone, which apparently decided to stay the same. So no matter where we are, we still have to deal with the time zone. So we have a lot of people coming from academia, industry, and government, as well as our technical partners in business. This year's theme was future casting. So the idea was to envision the future, to help make decisions to capture value and drive innovation now. We'd already been thinking about this theme, but it turns out to be, I think, perhaps even a little bit more provocative in the context that really started for all of us after March. And I think that we're seeing, in fact, the future in many ways unfolding in our present as we experience the changes that have occurred very quickly in the past 6 months. The philosopher Martin Heidegger, who I still always kind of go back to his famous quote, suggesting that the essence of technology is not anything technological. Really, it's our institutions, social habits, context, environment, and physical surroundings. It's everything but technology. For Heidegger, technology was really a way of revealing the world to us, which is, I think, what we're seeing in many ways. To be innovative, technology should activate change and engage with really all of our social, scientific, economic, physical, and now virtual environments. Reflecting on the last 6 months, I'm inclined to agree that most of the fundamental shifts that we're seeing are social and cultural, but certainly technology mirrors and is accelerating those changes. Another way to think about the future, maybe to go back to, again, an old chestnut, that is Marshall McLuhan. He made the famous statement in a book of actually not entirely the same title, but The Medium is the Message. And in the book, McLuhan argued that communication medium itself, it should be our focus, not really the message it contains. So a kind of inverse of Heidegger in some ways, but one which helps to explain how, in fact, the medium itself is a part of what changes our social, political, and cultural relationships. He said that the title is a kind of teaser, and I'm going to quote here from McLuhan, quote, "There's a wonderful sign hanging in a Toronto junkyard which reads, 'Help beautify junkyards, throw something away today.' This is a very effective way of getting people to notice a lot of things. And so the title, Medium is the Massage, is intended to draw attention to the fact that a medium is not something neutral. It does something to people. It takes hold of them. It rubs them off. It massages them and bumps them around, chiropractically, as it were. And the general roughing up that any new society gets from a medium, especially a new medium, is what is intended in the title." So McLuhan himself recognized the change that occurs and the kind of friction, basically, that happens when new technologies enable new kinds of social relations for us. For this conference, we're hoping to challenge, explore, and expand our understanding of digital mediums as we imagine how they might be used in the future, or the ways we're using them now, and what kinds of impacts those will have on future possibilities. So that's sort of the setup for this morning and for the rest of the conference. But before I begin, I just want to quickly recognize a couple of supporters, sponsors, people who've been really critical to making this happen. I'd like to recognize the generous support of Autodesk in Toronto. This is the Autodesk Innovation Labs. Mechdime, who's been a long-term supporter of the conference and the CAAV. Indiana University, which was the site of our previous conference, and numerous Clemson University groups, including the College of Architecture, Art and Humanities, the School of Architecture, the Institute for Intelligent Materials Systems and Environments, the Center for Workforce Development, Adobe Studios at the Clemson Library, the GIS Center, and the Data Visualization Labs. The Sunoco Institute, which has actually generously allowed us to use Nate Newsom, who's our technical manager, coordinator, and in many ways, co-conference organizer, as these two have to work quite closely together to make it at all possible. And finally, the Watt Family Innovation Center, and for that we have Tellen Burns, who so well was able to organize all of our links, get you all into the system, make it all possible in that way. We also have a group of students, and I'll introduce them later as we go through the conference, but they've also made a lot of things possible. Now I'd like to turn, if I could, to Sheila Cotton, who's our new Associate Vice President for Research and Development. And she's going to join us this morning to officially open the conference with a few words and welcome you to Clemson. Tellen, if we could switch to Sheila.
Good morning.
Welcome, Sheila. Good morning.
Welcome to Clemson, everyone. I know you're scattered around the world this morning, but we wish you could be here in person with us. I am really excited to be able to speak with you for a couple of moments this morning and to learn about this conference that's being conducted. I am a sociologist by training. As Elise mentioned, I just started a couple of months ago at Clemson. I was at Michigan State University prior to this. And I study all these devices that we're connected to 24/7 and how they impact our lives. So I was really excited to learn about this conference and the great work that y'all are doing. I love the topic of future casting. I think we are at such an important time in history right now with everything that's going on, from the pandemic to Black Lives Matter to the struggles that we see people facing on a daily basis as they try to deal with all the challenges that they're going through at this point in time, that anything that we can do to try to improve people's lives is a good thing at this point. And I do think that technology has a key role to play in that. You know, technology surrounds us, from the devices that we use to Zoom right now, to the cars that get us to where we need to go, to the way we consume entertainment, to the way we may be able to walk and get health care these days. And so being able to understand and to utilize technology effectively to improve people's lives, I think is really critical for us. And so being able to understand the impacts of technology and media, you know, I've said for many years, and unfortunately, I think it's still the case, we are in the infancy stages of understanding the impacts of all these technologies that people are using in society. And so we really need to both engage with the technology, but be able to understand it and be able to determine the impacts on people's lives across the life course, not just for young, but also for old and everybody in between, and for disadvantaged groups in particular. I mean, the pandemic is highlighting the digital divide that, you know, some people would suggest has been eliminated many years ago, but that's certainly not the case. We're seeing many kids and school systems that are struggling greatly right now. And, you know, I think that I would encourage you all to think about ways that we can partner across academia, across industry, across school systems, outreach organizations, to both develop new technologies that can enhance the world, but also to make technology better, the existing technologies that are out there, and think about ways to get technology in the hands of groups around the world that could benefit from that use. I think that technology really illustrates many of the larger scale social inequalities in society. And that if we don't do our best to try to engage with that technology and the creators of that technology, we need to try to lessen these inequalities. I'm a sociologist by training, in case you can't tell. So I'm much, focused on technology and how can we use it to improve the world. So I'm really excited that y'all are coming together for this conference, and I hope that it's a stimulating environment for you over the course of the conference. And if there's anything that I can do in my new role at Clemson to advance the great work that y'all are doing, please feel free to reach out to me. I am happy to chat with you, happy to connect you with folks across Clemson. There's amazing research going on across the university, and really to help you try to improve the world through the great work that you're doing. So thank you so much for allowing me to talk to you for a couple of minutes this morning, and I look forward to hearing more about the great work that y'all are doing.
Great, thanks, Sheila. I'm going to introduce very quickly. We really appreciate that, and we are excited actually to have you here at Clemson. Let me turn to Frank Klasner, who is the president of the CAAV and the director of the Center for Excellent and Enterprise Technology at Villanova. Hi, Frank. Good morning.
Myself here. Okay. Hello there, Elise, and good morning, everybody. Thank you, Vice President Cotton and Elise, for both of your gracious welcomes to what I guess is the newest virtual venue now at Clemson.
I think that's true.
Clemson is growing by leaps and bounds.
Leaps and bounds.
Wait until you all get a chance to see the meeting hall and all of the special rooms that have been set up in this virtual environment. I'm happy, really and truly, to welcome all of you in turn to our 5th annual CAAV conference and also our first fully virtual CAAV conference. 5 years. Wow. I came to that first conference 5 years ago, not knowing what I was going to get myself into, or I think what any of my colleagues who were there at the time were going to get themselves into. In another life, I've often thought I'd like to be a historian because I enjoy understanding how thought currents change over time, how people's perception of things change over time. And so getting ready for this conference, I spent some time looking over the agenda and the attendee list from that first conference to see where we come from and how does it compare to where we're at today as an organization. One thing I figured out, we hear so much use and even overuse of the word unprecedented these days, that it was actually a great source of comfort to see how actually precedented this organization and its annual conference has become. Back in 2015, there was a palpable sense of excitement among the conferees as we started that conference. What new colleagues would we meet? What new technologies would we experience? And most of all, what new lessons, what new tire-kicking concepts would we learn in applying all this advanced visualization to the academic and research missions of our particular home institutions? At that first conference, we had presentations on how to use visualization to various degrees of success and what lessons we learned from the humanities, medicine, medical health management, geoscience, and others. Today, as I look at the agenda and the work that's been put into moving us to a new virtual setting, these precedents are still being gracefully maintained and extended. We're once again offering a suite of presentations on AR and VR across a wide variety of domains. We'll be discussing, in fact, how the CAAV can grow through offering new content sharing services to its members, identifying grantsmanship ideas, and we'll be hearing a wide variety of presentations on visualizations in astronomy, chemistry, classical studies, health management, just to name a very few. I'm certain that these topics will contribute to the precedent of facilitating the meeting of new colleagues and sharing of new ideas. I'm confident that our own conference platform, that Tullen and Elise worked very diligently at, and Nate as well, to give us ample opportunity to kick the tires of the state-of-the-art VR and AR for mid-scale social gatherings online. And I trust that over the years, we have a fair number of returnees in the conference list of participants that we fostered a level of collegiality and camaraderie amongst all of us that will let us freely share the results of that tire kicking with each other. No holds barred, gang. With all that, we also have a precedent of offering great keynote presenters. And this year, it's no different. Our keynote is being offered by Elizabeth Barron. She is an enterprise solutions executive at Unity Technologies, where she creates solutions for the industrial design, engineering, and manufacturing space based on the innovative Unity platform that powers the creation at all points in the product development process. She applies holistic and creative solutions for enterprise to connect knowledge with experience for cross-functional teams. Formerly, Elizabeth was a technical specialist in immersive realities at Ford Motor Company. She is the principal inventor of the Ford Immersive Vehicle Environment, the process and its technology. It is an immersive environment with high realism and experience, providing contextual data and real-time global immersion for multiple disciplines across Ford. She then expanded FIVE, as the system is known, to combine the physical and virtual worlds, creating location-based, actionable, immersive storytelling in design studios. Elizabeth became the first virtual reality technical specialist at Ford, a position she was asked to create so she could grow the technology within the company. Elizabeth was awarded the highest individual technical award in Ford Motor Company, the Dr. Haran Gandhi Research and Innovation Award, honoring her career in immersive visualization and her technical leadership. In 2020, this year, she's been recognized by SIGGRAPH with the Practitioner Award for her contributions to industrial design and her influence on multiple industries. Elizabeth will be talking with us today about the new golden age of insight. Elizabeth, take it away.
All right. Thank you, Frank, and thank you, Sheila and Elise and everybody. I really appreciate the opportunity to share thoughts on how to realize fantastic efficiencies in product creation through immersive visualization. Career at Ford and now at Unity, I've realized that the world is better with more creators in it. When more people can come together and learn and share insights, not only can you develop better products, but in the end, customers realize better the insights that go along with that. And that is just a fantastic way to communicate. And I was glad that Elise was philosophical, because get ready. so will I be. So I'd like to pose this philosophical question. If a tree falls in a forest and no one's around to hear it, does it make a sound? This was a thought experiment, and it raises questions about observation and perception. And philosopher George Berkeley, in his work, A Treatise, Principles of Human Knowledge in 1710, proposed this idea. And this has relevance for technology as well, in my opinion. And so similarly for innovation, if an innovation is created and no one is around to experience it, does it do any good? So it took 60 years for the flush toilet to reach 20% adoption. And we all know that's a really good idea, but why did it take so long? But conversely, it took less than 5 years for the tablet devices to achieve that 20% rate. So it took years to bring immersive evaluations to Ford as part of the product development process. And Elise, I just so appreciated your introduction, because you're right on as far as culture and like the things that you have to do, and that the medium is the message. This is really where I'm going with this, because the adoption of the tech is really about you consuming it and understanding it and having it work. So the holistic interactions are really important and only partially fulfilled. And it's a lot of hard work to get that change in the industry. So I want to talk a little bit about a case of adoption of tech. So back in the day, Douglas Engelbart, this super smart guy, showed a suite of innovative technologies at a conference. And later this was termed the mother of all demos. And he demonstrated the fundamental elements of modern computing and interaction. He showed windows, hypertext, a graphical interface, efficient navigation and command input, video conferencing, voila, the computer mouse, word processing, let's see what else, dynamic file linking, revision control, and a collaborative real-time editor. It was an open source real-time collaboration platform with one person in Menlo Park, California, another one in San Francisco, editing a document in real time. This is back in 1968. So like DARPANET, so pre-internet. And then when you think about it, it's Google Docs. So in essence, it's very much like Google Docs, which was launched 38 years later in 2006. So Engelbart's desire was to truly make the world a better place. But could it have been better sooner if this technology had been adopted and accepted sooner? What company or organization could have realized benefit prior to 2006? And what new innovations could have come if the tech was brought forth in the 80s or 90s? Douglas Engelbart proposed a concept of collective intelligence, how to extend your knowledge through the smart use of technology. And I really believe that we are embarking upon a renaissance in a new age where technology can finally work with you naturally so that you can learn and grow with your teams, train models over time using artificial intelligence based on experience and discovery that you and teams make, and present information to you in context the way you need to consume it. So of course I come from the automotive space, and if I look back on history, I'm not quite this old, but designing, this is how, this is General Motors in their studio design area. And some of these people are artists, some of them are engineers, and this is how everybody worked. They consider the method. They had vellum, and they went and laid out their drawings, laid out their engineering, and that's how everybody worked, from auto to aero and more. And now when you think about the benefits of going from vellum to CAD, think about the amount of insight people could realize by having their model in computer-aided design. So flat screen digital reviews extended our understanding of design and allowed design and engineering to share status. And so from that came a lot of innovation in process and in information sharing. So there's CAD, data management. There was like this foundation of this platform based on like how you get data. They created bill of process for how you can manufacture, bill of materials. What do you need to make the product? There was more growth in analytics, computer-aided engineering, computational fluid dynamics. And all of these other innovations allowed automotive, aerospace, and other manufacturers to understand functions in great detail. But now we're beginning this new level of understanding of each other. It's a holistic interaction. It's collaborative, considering the global enterprise. It should be done without fanfare, being part of the process of product creation, including all relevant information with engineering integrity. And importantly, always with the ability to represent the customer's viewpoint, showing analytics in the context of the customer. And so the nature of experience is changing. And so we're really now in an experience economy and not in a product economy. So making things is part of the equation. And now it's, once you make it, how do you experience it and how do you share it? Automotive is going a lot into rideshare. So people might not in the future actually just buy their own one car and have it. They might hail a ride, and that might be the new way. So now that's experience-based. And this is a typical and fun, in my opinion. I'm in that picture with that's my son driving, and my 360 camera. I put in the truck. But this experience is currently, for the automotive example, about in-cabin, 3 rows, command position, driver interaction, and about how to get in and out of the vehicle and do user like ergonomic training. And ergonomics is really important, but the nature of interactions are changing. And so customers' free time can be used in novel ways in autonomous vehicles, for example. And product design is evolving to think more about that experience and to experience the design and to look at the whole and not the separate, distinct parts of the functions that make up a product so that things work in harmony. So experience design is the practice of designing products, processes, services, events, with a focus placed on the quality of what you experience and culturally relevant solutions, which potentially could be different, of course, per region. And primarily, user experience design practitioners use personas, which is the personification of research. They can put together user journeys which visually demonstrate the experience that users have at points in the process. They do sketching and whiteboarding. They do wireframes, high fidelity mock-ups, prototypes, both physical and virtual. They do user testing, so they actually go out and ask people, what do you think of this design? But above all else, and including all of this, is storytelling. These stories are all around us. They're how we connect with our world. And it's really the way that we interact with technology really should be about those stories and how we tell the story of the product and how we visualize that and how we connect to it so that we can develop these better products. So I wanted to just give a little bit of background about like where I came from at Ford. So that top picture, that's a oak and mahogany car because I'm tracking, that's me in the picture. And if you look, you can vary, it's a small picture, but it's limited to 60,000 polys. And I have an avatar in my world, and I'm being tracked through magnetic motion tracking, hence the oak and mahogany vehicle prop that I'm in. But I was looking at how to do interaction between me and a vehicle. So you can see the stages of development of the tech. And so putting together the vehicle in that regard with a physical model was like the next level of interaction. And then getting a full vehicle that had all the different parts was another level. And then in 2014, looking at a fully materialized vehicle, real-time ray tracing, 4K, with manufacturing process and design. So a lot of innovation has taken place in that space. So now I want to go back and be a little bit more philosophical again. And so sometimes I thought, so if I go back between 2010 and 2014, I had a personal revelation due to some vision issues I had that were corrected that made me go back in time and think about what the immersive visualization technologies can offer. Why are they special? What's different about it? Why aren't we just looking at a screen? Why do we need to get inside of an environment and look around? And what does it give us that's unique? And who should care about it? So oftentimes the best guide forward is to look to the past. And so I took inspiration from a few thought leaders, many actually, but I'm going to cite 2, about how to inspire and enhance global collaboration along the spectrum from design to engineering. And so Aristotle said the aim of art is to represent not the outward appearance of things, but their inward significance. That quote reminds me of how data is collected and interpreted in the product creation process. And how must it be viewed from the perspective of the customer who buys that product and spends time with it? And it taught me that it's good to be constantly mindful to keep the customer at the center of everything when developing products that, of course, somebody else will use. And the second wise man is Einstein, of course. And he said, the only way of intuition, which is helped by a feeling for the order lying behind the appearance. And I thought this was really fascinating because essentially in my mind, what he's saying is everything has to make sense. It has to be in a specific and proper order. And there's a way that when you see it happening, you know that it's done correctly. And I find that fascinating from like the consummate scientist. And these quotes from these monumental individuals provided inspiration for me for the development of a strategy and philosophy for how to get at the heart of experience, to understand products in many facets. And the goal is to put in as much relevant information as possible into immersive environments. So the visual environment, yes, but how you see it and how you perceive it. And then review it in context to derive a holistic appreciation of the customer's experience. And that includes the functional experience. And so let's talk about human vision for a second. Because we see the world through this small degree of high visual acuity, and our brains stitch together the input received. So we have that little 2-degree foveal area of super high accuracy. Our saccades are like moving our eyes in very rapid succession, but our brain is involved in stitching together these images to give us a clear view of the world. And in my opinion, since the brain is involved, all bets are off. So what we see is interpreted by our brains, and a level of subjectivity ensues. This manifests in an interpretation of intent versus the possible actual intent that was put together. And so really immersive visualization is melding both art and science. So how can I take subjective data and put it in an objective context? So really the answer is to go back to science for that. So look at the physical properties of light and how it propagates in a scene, and represent that in a rendered real-time 3D environment. Think about environmental simulations and the effect of environment on virtual data. What's reflecting off what? What's kind of making a material glow? Is it shiny? Is it matte? And then I thought about human vision and stereoscopy. And so the way it manifested at Ford was being able to take scientific data, look at analytics, look at the character lines of a vehicle, but put it in the context of a well-crafted I would see. And so during the development of the 5 technology at Ford, this is the level of quality for immersive reviews that we got to. And I really did think it looked great. But there are issues. So it was based on a pre-computation of light and shadow in the environment. And so the interfaces between body panels are dimensionally correct, but they appear farther apart due to a lack of accurate shadow. In the pre-computed lighting and shadow, based on a set of conditions, approximates the propagation of light in the environment instead of giving you the actual light and shadow in the environment. It's another story, but this revelation I had when I realized that things were wrong helped me catch what was really wrong about these environments. So we instituted real-time ray tracing in these 3D environments. So you could get in an immersive environment and look at it with proper light and shadow. So now if you notice the side view mirror is reflected in the body, you can see it reflected. You see that the dimension of the side of the Mustang has like more depth to it, even though it's a 2D image that you're looking at. There's no change to the geometry. I'm going to go back. And if you look at these images, that's the before and the after, you can see how much more depth just having proper light and shadow has on the creation of the image. And so there's more contour, there's more definition, there's more perception, it looks like there's a tighter tolerance between the hood and the front quarter panel because it's rendered properly and it's from the right perspective. And so the same thing on the interior. If you look at this interior image, it almost looks like there's material mismatch between the door and the A-pillar between the glass. But then when you look at it with ray tracing, you can see that the door actually has that emissive quality that shows the absorption properties of the material and the way it emits some light back. And you can see the instrument cluster in the side glass, which is obviously very common. And so you can understand how important the high visual quality is to reviews. And so look at some of these images and the way the vehicles look and the amount of information that you can get is just absolutely fantastic. And being able to judge in these environments what is going on is really helpful to put things in context. So what you really get to is a practical application of art and science. It's an effective representation of multifunctional capabilities. And storytelling can be used to create mood, showcase use cases, and showcase things from a first person or a third person representation. So in this example, this is the third person, but you could become one of those people and walk around in that environment and maybe hail a ride and understand more about how people will relate to products in the future. And then you can do applied art and science and do a holistic product creation process and make it visually profound. And this allows teams to collaborate in an immersive space, sharing benefits of a personal connection to scientific and artistic data. You can evaluate engineering and design considerations from a customer's perspective and see and understand and experience the data in context. I mean, look at all the data that's in that environment, and it's all done real-time ray traced. The body in this case has been turned clear so that you can see through it and see the engineering structure beyond. So the power of holistic immersion gives a deeper understanding, which is both emotive and scientific, of an experience, so that you can discover new solutions and turn those discoveries into amazing products. And it's at the heart of how we understand and share. And because I believe immersion, immersive visualization, and all that data is a natural paradigm when it's done correctly that allows us to experience, share, and discover. And the truth is that all of these functions that come together are connected. And so the immersive space can be used as a new way to communicate. It's experiential. It brings things to a common understanding of the product. And everyone in a company understands the end product that they're creating in their own discipline. So if you're in analytics, you understand the end product, and you also understand the scientific factors that go into structure and engineering integrity, just the same as somebody who's from design understands the product and the beauty and artistry of it for a customer, or the function of it for like pure manufacturing space. But it really, immersive tech really brings a spreadsheet to life for an artist, and it brings a design to life for an engineer. So in this case, a lot of these people in these little circles have unlike minds. Their disciplines are drastically different from somebody else's. But this is the perfect communication paradigm for them to communicate. So I'll show you a few examples of that. This is a computational fluid dynamics simulation of a defrost event. And so now you can do what-if studies, see the effects of the defrost pattern on the environment, see what it means for the customer who's in that environment and how it manifests for them and their visibility. Look at lighting design and engineering and optical analysis for headlamps for lighting coverage. And getting immersed in virtual environments allows teams to involve the experience and user interface, to include any potential reality, to ideate, to create these custom solutions where you can do diagnostic and information analysis modes to get functional interactive experiences on the strength of engaging a real-time 3D platform. And putting together the physical world with the virtual world. And you can create light, simple, and specific properties that really, and what I used to say is important, is they have an inner beauty. So you can have this really sparse, Spartacan looking interface, but when you get immersed in the immersive world, it's a beautiful product, but everything you touch and feel is there for you to connect with. So now you're augmenting the visible world with the physical world, and the interaction that you get is much stronger because the connection that you're making includes more senses and it makes more sense. And when you're posturally correct inside of a vehicle, in this case, the amount of information that you get and the connection you feel and the realism really skyrockets. And so mixed reality is another way to improve efficiency and quality for design, engineering, and training. Mixed reality applications can be applied to reduce quality inspections from days to hours and provide important physical connection to immersive data to allow you to get more information presented to you for physical products that are there. Real-time 3D helps with training machine learning algorithms for autonomous systems like vehicles, robots, and more. Instead of taking expensive and time-consuming process to gather real-world data, companies are using real-time 3D to create synthetic data and auto-label the data at scale and feed perception models. This synthetic data is orders of magnitude cheaper and faster and more accurate than constructing the real world data. And so another thing is to look at engineering integrity in a new way. This example shows a virtual truck model using holographic technology. By using this capability in their industrial workflow, the manufacturer can view and modify a full-scale truck body design and see the effects of the modification on airflow dynamics. And then for in-field and service work, immersive visualization is reducing mistakes. The inspection of electrical wiring ensures proper electrical wiring configuration. And in a finished vehicle, however, the inspections and the connector positions and pin assignments is a serious challenge. So instead of relying on 2D diagrams, visualize the entire 3D electrical wiring diagram inside the doors or other parts of the car. And so now the field service engineers can gain contextual understanding to visualize the location of the wiring systems without the labor and time needed to remove physical parts, kind of hunting around for where they should go and what they need to service. And so really the value of holistic interaction is that it's this powerful paradigm that can increase the value that's realized in a company. And a ripple effect flows through multiple organizations once it takes off. And you can study more relevant iterations. You can receive helpful contextual information when you need it. You get answers revealed to you sooner. You get directionally correct strategy sooner and decrease development time for faster time to market. And more importantly, people are working, sharing, and discovering naturally. And it's really authentic based on your workflow, including your platform and your pipeline. So I want to talk a little bit about platform and pipeline because it's critical for immersive visualization implementation in enterprise to have a platform of trusted data and a pipeline to transport data where it needs to be visualized. This is a very hard problem to tackle and often not tackled because it's kind of no fun. Seeing things visually is a lot more fun than trying to figure out how to get data to you, but it's critical. And it needs to include cross-functional data to simulate and simultaneously gauge product performance, quality, manufacturability, along with the product orientation info. And so the engagement of all functions is critical. So you need to have the different teams and the different functions give you analytic data, give you CAD data, give you metadata. And the foundation, when it's done, is a visually compelling, data-rich environment that's available to all. and it's omni-channel. So you can look at something on your mobile phone and use your mobile phone as a window into the virtual world, put on a headset, look at it on a monitor, however it is. You get content data delivery from all functions. That's the goal. And Elise also talked about culture, and it's so important. Deployment in enterprise really means that you need support from grassroots to executive to support a new interface, a new paradigm, and a new way of working. Because devices and wearables in enterprise really do require a set of decorum and function. And collaboration and cross-functional communication is different in immersive environments than it is like for flat screen, like Zooming, like we're doing now. And so you need to have an understanding of what to show to who and when, and what those organizational rules are, like Robert's Rules of Order for immersive visualization. Because the benefits of global immersive collaboration are many, but it can lead to confusion if you have like a zillion people all with headsets on, kind of like doing this and in their own world, but not sharing. So the structure needs to be really well adopted in order for the paradigm to really take off. And when it does, the use of immersion can grow organically at a rate of over 25% a year. I would actually challenge companies to say, if you're not growing at over 25% a year, then really assess why not, because the paradigm is so new and it's so rich that people should just really be finding new ways to use it that you never thought or dreamed of, because those ways are out there. And so that paradigm, every enterprise can adapt and grow the technology and realize these new ways and make those connections that you saw on that slide with all the circles in it. And so the holistic interaction is really an integral part of the product creation process, because there is this wealth of information. But if a company hasn't embraced immersive visualization, it could seem that most kind of swim in their lane, even when they're together. And they have, like, if you think about how much information you have on your mobile phone, it's a lot. But when no one is sharing that information that they know with somebody else, even when they're together, they're not benefiting from the experience and knowledge that they have. And the teamwork part kind of falls away a little bit. Paradigm, because it's new, you really do need those levels of interaction and ways of working together and communicating and knowing when the paradigm is good and when it's not good, because it's not always the best way to communicate. And when the technology does work for you, it's great. But when it doesn't, there's this unnatural shift in how you behave. So an example of that is if you put a headset on and you have a game controller and you have to push, this button here or hit A and B or click down here in order to do something. Like if you're doing a study of the design inside of a vehicle, but you have to turn the steering wheel, you have to hit C on your game controller. That doesn't make any sense. And so how can you understand a complex system, all of its interdependencies, and possibly someone else's viewpoint when you have to learn an interaction paradigm? Because in that case, you're focused on how to, are you focused on the problem or how to understand the problem? And when you're focused on how to understand the problem, it takes away from actually solving the problem. So a holistic approach to technology, from product creation through 3D interactive experience, is really that new normal. And I showed that in the slide with the physical property. So putting touch points in when you can is a really good idea. Whatever you can do to get yourself free from the tech so that the tech works for you. And I love this, this guy's so happy. But when the tech works for you, it does allow you to realize your artistic and technical creativity, because it's a sound interaction paradigm that levels the playing field. It sees where problems are and finds the issues naturally. And so the thing that's so great is that when the technology works for you, it kind of disappears. And when it's done really well, you don't even realize very much that you're being augmented by this technology, because your level of interaction with the product and in your environment is so natural that it just makes sense. And so if you think about it in another adage of a picture is worth 1,000 words, what does it mean to have information presented to you in context, volumetrically, with other senses, within a globally connected team? Holistic product creation and immersion, I mean, 10 million words, I don't know, but it's a lot. And so there's so much going on. There's like the future casting concept I just love. And where do we go from here? What is the value of real-time 3D to communicate and understand these immersive visualization environments? What the power of the subtle cues we see in the world around us, and it's a future where immersion is available to everyone. And it's something that's smart and instinctive and strategic in the way it's deployed to enable enterprise to work intuitively, to express not only their creativity, but their passion. And so cross-functional benefits for immersive insight continue to evolve so that the artist and the engineer can have a meaningful dialogue and communicate in a way that's extremely effective and insightful, despite being two people who are worlds apart in their mental models. The use of immersive insight to create an environment that provides everyone with something that they can relate to and understand is really important. Getting the right data to the right people in the right geography, in the right context, that's where it's at. So experiencing design generation in real-time 3D and with a personal connection to the thing that you're studying. Integration of as many or as few senses for understanding, including all information required from the senses meaningfully integrated. Experiential presence in storytelling, to do what-if studies and to get at the heart of what a customer really wants. And then thinking about the excellent potential of integration with AI, and I said to learn from and impart wisdom to. And what I mean by that is, what can you learn from experiencing an immersive environment? A lot. What wisdom can you impart to others based on what you've learned? A ton. So there really is so much that can be done, both imparting things to people and consuming the information yourself, that makes the immersive visualization environment just an amazing paradigm for communication. So thank you so much. And that's what I have for you today. And back to Frank.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
Thanks so much. That was great. A lot of food for thought. I mean, you covered so much in the talk, which is great, but you covered all the, sort of major discussion points in terms of user experience, user interface, right? Working, collaborating, the platforms that enable that or don't, basically. And then the human dimension, which I really appreciated that you always came back to. Yeah. Frank, did you have more questions? But I'm gonna look in the question and answer as you maybe ask the first thing. Maybe he didn't hear me. Am I muted?
I'm sorry?
Frank, did you want to, I've got a few questions, but I was going to look at the Q&A and see if anyone had added any. If you guys have any questions, please add them to the Q&A and I'll be more than happy to share, or unmute and just pop into the conversation.
Elise, why don't you start with the first question? And because I think some people got caught off guard.
No problem. That's right. No worries there. I totally understand. So as you were talking, there were a couple of things that struck me, and and it's sort of, some of it harkens back to sort of old ideas about aesthetics versus new ideas about aesthetics. So I love the example of the ray tracing, which increased, in a sense, the perceptual awareness, right? So increased an appreciation. And I'm thinking about how that's working with HD too on our TV screens. So, you know, makeup that's been developed now to address the flaws that show up in HD, or plastic surgery, which is, you know, it on the increased signal. You can't now be in the public eye to a certain extent without some kind of plastic surgery if you're in the front of the camera, because you know that it's going to pick up a lot of flaws. I mean, I'm not arguing one way or the other in this way. I'm just saying it's an outcome, almost like your cars, right? Where, you know, you sort of had to design them differently because, oh my gosh, we can see their flaws, see the issues more directly. But one of the things that I wonder is, you talked a lot about aesthetics really in terms of the senses, which is actually an old idea in terms of the senses. But the other thing that we tend to layer on top of that was the notion of pleasure, which then produced things like style and aesthetics and taste, all that sort of stuff. So stuff that starts to emerge from, you know, why we like something. And I'm wondering, you know, in the design process, particularly for these cars or for other things that we're doing in our world, you know, how are we supposed to balance between, like, what are the criteria, in a sense, for determining the success of the object, right? Yes, the user likes it, but do we know that they like it because it's a sensory experience that's somehow better, or that there's some other kind of notion of aesthetics tied to it, like beauty, for instance, right? I'm not saying they're completely separate, but they're definitely on a spectrum. And I'm just wondering where you come down on that in terms of the design of objects in the, you know, in the world today.
Yep. And so, yes, the beauty of an object, and those quotes from Aristotle and Einstein, like when things are proportioned and they just work right, and they're designed like to a point of perfection that somebody actually, that design emotes, and some people connect with things that are well proportioned and beautiful and have like a beautiful flow to them. And the challenge in immersive environments is how do you convey that? Because so often in the past it's lost, because once you slap on a headset and you look at something, it just doesn't look the same as if you just looked at a real car. And so there are technologies out there that, you know, aren't consumer grade, but professional grade, to give you something that's closer to like an HD, you know, a 4K TV, so to speak, that you can visualize things and get an understanding of how that design is emoting and what it means. And what I especially love about this tech, and I think Elise, you're asking this question in maybe a back end way from what I see, is like, the design is paramount. It's the thing that draws you as a customer to the product. And so it has to look good, but if it looks good and you get in it doesn't make sense, like for a car, you don't want it. So it can look like, it can be like super sexy and just beautiful, but if it doesn't function, then you don't want it because it doesn't make sense. It's like, it's just stops being beautiful when you try to interact with it, and it's a pain. Or if it breaks, or so if it's functionally not good, then the artistry falls away. And so what I love about the immersive paradigm is it brings these groups together, because most of the time, for most of products that were being developed, those groups were separate, and they came together during a prototype physical build to see how it all kind of meshed. And the way that they connected would be like through a CAD review or a roll and tumble review, and then that was it. And so the ability to kind of get in and have a dry run of like a user's experience, like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to go and I'm going to drive and go get bubble tea, and I'm going to pick up my friend and we're going to go and check out you know, whatever. Or I'm going to get my buddies in my truck and go camping. Like to do role playing like that on product as it's being developed is priceless because it really gets at the use, and it allows the beauty and the form and the function to come together and make sense so that you can develop a better product.
Thanks. That's great. Yeah, I hadn't thought about it in that sense of it's really uniting those two into the same stream. In my own industry, that's already a given, but it's not a given in a lot of other industries. Mm-hmm. So that's part of it. So sometimes it's hard for me to see the forest for the trees. Do you know what I'm saying? In terms of how this has really changed the way people work. Wow. Yeah, I mean, I have another question for you. I'm just going to be pushy since we've got you. So we're seeing a lot of change in the past 6 months. I mean, I sort of imagine myself living in dog years now. It's like every month feels like every week feels like a year or something. Like it's this crazy compression that's happened. Mm-hmm. What do you see sort of from your point of view, from Unity, from working within Ford, with these large industries basically in the United States? You know, what do you see as some of the outcomes, say, in 2 years from this? I mean, I don't think, and I'm just speculating, and I want you to speculate from your position because I think you can see a broader field. But from my small, sort of sandlot, I'm like, well, it's not going to go back to what it was, but I just don't know exactly how, what some of those changes might be. And I'm wondering what you're seeing and hearing sort of as you talk to folks around the country and the world.
Yeah, so what's really interesting is like through my years at Ford, trying to get adoption of immersive tech, I would get a review with some executive and I'd have this headset and I'd have this stuff sitting there and I wanted them to take the headset, put it on, and voila, see this beautiful virtual car. And what they would do is go, hey, Joe, why don't you try it? and I'm like, oh.
That's pretty funny. But there, yeah.
But that was really common. And it was, and that's like that slide on culture that I talked about. There's something about putting something over your eyes and not being able to see the other people in the room that is a little disheartening, especially the higher level you are in a company. It's they want to connect, they kind of want to read the room, they're used to that, and you cover their eyes and blind them from that. And then it's just a really weird dynamic. And so to your question, like on how things are changing, is by necessity, because we're in this work from home space, and like executives are working from home just like is, they still need to get their work done. And so now being in their home office with their gamer headset, getting inside and looking at their product is a major bonus. Mm-hmm. And so I have seen it over and over, immersive collaboration and using real-time 3D, like with Unity and with other platforms to get inside and be there here. So like if the star of the show is the product. So like for automotive, you want to look at your vehicle and everybody is in their space, kind of life-size looking at a vehicle and interacting, and they can have somebody else in that space as well. And they can see like a representation of where they are, but they're coming together just like as if they were around a clay walking and seeing that model. So I think the adoption of immersive workflows is going to greatly increase, and that will increase even once people get back together, because I think the dynamic has changed and work from home is kind of a standard now, and it'll remain a standard. So if you want to participate in an immersive review from home where 3 other people are, in the design studio, that will be okay.
Yeah, I mean, that is so interesting. So that, in effect, it also kind of forces a shared experience in a way, which you're suggesting wasn't possible before. And that's pretty fantastic when you, so you can point how do you say, you're pointing to the same thing that you want somebody to look at, and that group's sharing that experience with the
Right.
design object or the design world that you're creating. Yeah, that's true. That actually, I mean, I'm sure there's going to be somebody who will study the percentage
Yeah.
that improves our communication in some
Yeah.
way, right? Like it's more efficient in some way. But yeah, and then I love it's so true. I've tried to get, I mean, I'm sure everybody here's had this experience with either an administrator or someone that who's going to make the decision about usually purchasing said objects, to try to get them to put it on, and they just wouldn't do it, right? They just couldn't quite. No, yeah, that's an interesting thing, but yeah, no, okay. And now I think you're right. I think that you know, I haven't tried it, but I suspect you're right. After the 6 months, that's no longer. I mean, that's just going to be standard now, basically.
Yeah, I think so. And it's interesting because you said that it wasn't possible before, and I'd go back to my Google Docs example and say, yes, like this technology has been around. Look at me with, not that it was elegant, but I mean, look at me in 1999, 2000 with the wood buck and the sensors all over me. I'm not saying it was good back then and that it was ready for prime time, but the technology has existed for decades, and gamer headsets came out in like 2013. And so that's 7 years. So that's still a long time. So what are we waiting for? So like and there needs to be a change agent in automotive. For me at Ford, the change agent was the downturn in 2008, 2009. That time was so rough. And they're like, hey, we can do something virtual? Sure. And so that was the start of people seeing the tech in a new way and just perceiving like, oh, yeah, I see, this can add value and it costs very little and it does a whole lot. It might not be perfect. And that's something I also touched on but didn't talk too much about, is that no technology is perfect and everything is a compromise. Even the physical world is a compromise because you can't represent all lighting conditions and all environments in the physical world. So everything is a compromise. But what can it do well? What can you get out of it? And when can you share and learn? And what are the results? So hard work needs to be done by the users of the tech to know when it's capable and how confident you are that it's going to work for you, because it's not always true. And if you force the technology to do everything and it does some things very poorly, then the adoption just plummets because they're like, I'm out, I got a bad result, this stuff doesn't work. But no, it does work, but it just maybe doesn't work for that. So you have to know when to employ it and when to go back to other methods that are more effective.
Yeah. No, I think that's right. And Jeff's got a question which I think sort of builds on that idea. And that is, he's asking, what language do you use to motivate an engineer to value 3D visualization? My experience is that someone like a stress engineer doesn't see that value in showing the 3D viz of their simulations. Would they rather show They would rather show graphs, pictures, you know, the typical subjects. So what's the language that you use here?
So the language is the language of the product, and the value is in cross-functional communication. So maybe, what was it, a structural engineer? Was that
a stress engineer?
Stress engineer. So
Yeah.
So if like if you're analyzing stress on your structure and you're looking at an Excel spreadsheet that tells you, you know, that engineer where the stresses are, how stressed it is, and then you like maybe go to a CAD, like a flat screen review, and you show the rainbow pattern of the stresses on different parts of the product. That's good for you as an engineer. But if you want if the engineer needs to tell the designer that they have to change the design, that's just not going to fly in their world. They're going to look at rainbow colors and Excel spreadsheets and say, you know, that doesn't mean anything to me. You got to figure out how you're going to fix that because my design is beautiful and people really love it. And it tested really well when we took it out and showed people.
Yeah,
So
right.
And so what the value is of the tech is the coming together. So in the case of the stress on the product, the immersive platform might not be the best thing because they get a lot of information out of Excel and flat screen, but their communication with other people, it becomes invaluable because now the way that you can talk and communicate and share allows you to show in their mental model what it's like and what the impact is on them, which is the important thing when you want somebody else to change. And so that's where the technology shines, is that's this cross-functional cross communication. That's the what happened at Ford, I'm just so happy about it. The technology was what I ended up doing to get adoption was I figured out what the high hurts were and where the physical world was failing people. And that's why I said even the physical world is a compromise. And so one of the highest level hurts was crafted quality. Like, how do you assess the manufacturing process and put it on the design? So I went and I tackled that. And that's where like ray tracing came from, and the ability to, like, you could actually move body parts and show manufacturing process capability in real time on the design with ray tracing. But that allowed a team of people to communicate status, and they were kind of like, in a way, they were the people that did crafted quality reviews were somewhat powerless to change things themselves. So they had to rely on a structural engineer because of, there was a stress that was causing the manufacturing process to put butt two parts together and there was an issue. Or they had to rely on design to change something. So they had to go and get other people to see that there was a problem in what the customer would take delivery of. And so that type of coming together is where the tech does the best.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, I think you sort of led with it's the product drives the thing, right? So you always come back to how you get them to engage with the product. And it sounds a little bit like sort of seeing is believing too, in a sense. Like, but it is difficult sometimes to get them in there. So Kurt Hoffmeister wants to know, he also says hello and says, having known you for years, I would say she was a passionate VR technology gatekeeper. What a great name, with high standards, and that's good. But his question is, how would you advise companies to adopt today?
So adoption, it's interesting because like going back to Ford, adoption really comes by effective results. And so tackling one of those high hurts for a company and showing its use is really, I think, the key. And so what happened at Ford was I analyzed from 2012 to 2018 the use of immersive tech. And so starting in 2013, doing immersive reviews was part of the global product development process. And every vehicle had to go through an immersive review in the 5 Lab in order to be built globally. And so somehow somebody had to, like, even South America, there's Lab, Australia, whatever, they had to go through an immersive review for certain points in the process. But those requirements stayed the same from 2013, 2014 until present day, as far as I know. Maybe it's changed. But the use of the tech increased 50% every year. So what that told me was, and then I went and I looked at what people were looking at. They found new and novel ways of checking out the tech, of assessing things using the immersive paradigm. So it started out with one thing, which was these craftsmanship reviews that showcased kind of like a cross-functional team because so many people had to come together. And then those people said, I'm from motorsports, but I can get an understanding of, something about, the new Mustang and performance in an immersive space. So I'm going to call a meeting with a bunch of engineers and engine engineers or whatever and have a review. And so the technology started to grow organically. And then by the end, it was like, or not the end, by the time I left Ford, not the end, because it's still going, the amount of use cases just like exploded. And over 10,000 people were invited to participate in an immersive review by the end of 2018.
Wow, that's a lot.
It's fantastic. Not that everyone went, but those were like all
Right.
meetings. But that's a fantastic amount of people that in a company that had the chance to at least participate in some form of an immersive review. I mean, and so I guess the adoption question, Kurt, to come back is really, what is that high hurt? And if it's something that touches many different organizations, all the better. And then I found that everything really took off when I could get like the ear of somebody in a senior leadership position who would understand the importance of this cross-functional paradigm. And I think now, in times of COVID and the way things are have gone, like I think the time is right for leaders to see what this paradigm can do and how it can enhance communication. And I think if we keep thinking about it in terms of these verticals and these ways people work in their own areas and their own functions, it's not as valuable compared to, spreading out and representing multiple functions and using it as a way of tying them together.
That kind of horizontal structure that everybody talked about in the 80s, which is now actually coming to fruition, right? You remember the sort of World Web, where it's like a web. I mean, we had all sorts of ways of discussing, but nobody was really doing it.
Yeah.
It seems like it's happening now really quickly. So Kurt says, thank you. He says, I'm going to utilize the high hurt concept as a value driver. I too wrote down the high hurt. I have a feeling that one might come up in my conversation as well.
Good.
Elizabeth, I want to thank you for joining us today. This was really interesting and a great way to set up the conference. Frank, do you have any closing comments you'd like to make? And thanking Elizabeth, it was just really enjoyable.
Yeah, Elizabeth, I'm grateful for your presentation, and less as a product developer and more as an educator. I was struck by how a lot of your comments would apply to the educational process, where the product might not be a physical 3D object, but rather a mental 3D concept that we want to express, we want to represent. And some of the questions that were asked, I too wanted to ask, well, how do you motivate the people in the different circles to communicate with each other? What questions, what topics should you raise to get them talking on the same wavelength with each other to share this information that needs to be put into the product? I'm going to take away a lot of that and use that as well as an educator. I've been working in my center with several educators who want to develop presentations, 3D presentations, virtual reality presentations for their various courses. And yeah, these are very good talking points for me to go to them with now. So thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Happy to help. And let me know if I can help at all, otherwise. So I'd be happy to.
Well, actually, Elizabeth.
Will do. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
It was really great. Round of applause, please, or virtual yes, or I don't know what we do these days, but thank you so much.
Take care.
Take care.
Yeah, thank you. Bye.
All right, bye. Thanks.